anyway, so now the passion for the arts is there on my part. And I run a very disciplined program. And I was trained in dance and found out that there are so many different facets that the fine arts offers children. So when I'm teaching, sometimes I'll say, you know, if you don't understand, if you don't have a love of science, you cannot be a good dancer. You cannot be a good pianist. You cannot be a good violinist. You cannot be good in anything that has motion, because science is the basis of what you're doing. If you do a pirouette, if you do, Shanae turns very fast, you're working on centrifugal force. So that's important. And then math is extremely important. If you're going to be a phenomenal pianist, your mind has to be so mathematically tuned to be good. And so the better you become in that, your math skills are becoming a part of who you are. And so the fine arts should not be ever thought of a separate entity of who a human being is. I have one young lady who was a phenomenal dancer, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to go on to do, you know, just great things in the dance world. Well, she went on to actually be the program director for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. for almost a year, right out of college. And the thing is, she found out instead of being a performer, she really liked the person who was planning, who was going to get others excited about what was going on. The fine arts are important for people to relax. I had my knee replaced 2.5 years ago, and the doctor said, what kind of music do you like? And I said, well, I like Neil Diamond, da-da-da-da-da-da. And he says, so during surgery, if I'm playing hard rock, would that bother you? And I said, probably, yes. So, but even doctors, even surgery, music is part of the relaxation, but it's a stimulus for the mind. And I just wish we could not think that the fine arts and even athletics, being physically healthy, are separate from history, math, science, reading, even computers, which I hate because I'm just so old I don't want to have to deal with them. But it's all that well-roundedness that's extremely important for us to be a human being, a complete human being, a whole human being. Music touches our spirituality. Music touches our hearts. It gets our mind stimulated. It also makes your body feel better. If you have an elderly person who cannot get out of bed, and my dad recently passed away, but he just, on Saturdays, he would turn his little boombox on. The TV had to be off. He would close his eyes, and the music of Frank Sinatra, it took him back to that time. I mean, actually, it's interesting because the fine arts here was just nothing. When I had my first dance recital here in 1970, I had 25 students, which I was very proud of. I had 18 people in the audience. So that means we had some parents missing from the show to even see their own children. By the end of the 30-minute little dance recital, I had 0 people in the audience because they had to go, the dads had to go off golfing or doing whatever they did, and moms had to go run an errand, and you know, Hobbs was very small, so kids could walk home and after the show and stuff. So so from that time now, I have in the now going on 47 years that I've been here, we now have 3 full dance recitals and close to almost 2,000 people at each recital attending, and 500 dance students, which has fluctuated when the oil fluctuates, but it always builds back up again. And in terms of the fine arts building here, when Tom and I were I think we were about 24 years old, Gil Henshaw from the News Sun came to us and said, you know, we need some sponsorship to bring in the New Mexico Symphony. And so we said, sure, we'll sponsor for $1,000. And then when we committed to that, we thought, how could we do that? I mean, we didn't have a pot to pee in. So, but we had grown up in Albuquerque, and we knew how great the symphony was. I had danced with Santa Fe Opera my junior year in high school and performed with the symphony. And I thought, oh my gosh, what an opportunity. So that's when Tom and I decided, the fine arts is an extremely important part of our life and the lives of the people around us. And that if we helped bring in the arts, then we would also help the arts grow here at their own rate. I mean, like I said, 18 students in the very beginning. So that's one of our things. And we brought in the UTEP Ballet Company at one point when we were very young. We started taking our dancers on trips to San Francisco and California when I'm 21, 22, because two of the dancers at San Francisco Pacific Ballet Company I had studied with for a year in Albuquerque, Grace Doty and Alan Howard. And they were dancers with Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, which is an offshoot of the Diaghilev, offshoot of Kirov and the Moscow Ballet and all that. So I thought, even if we go for just a week, the girls would get such a great opportunity that I had had. And they did. So the three girls were Marcy Floyd and Janice Baber and Amy Clark. And all three have, to this day, have their hand in the arts. One is a lawyer, and one is a professional singer, Amy Clark. And, of course, Janice is a neat mom who raised a neat girl who had a career with us in dance and then became I think she's an orthopedic surgeon now. So, yeah, anyway, so through the years, we've brought in special guest artists and tried to be part of anything that built. We're the original members of Southwest Symphony. We were able to bring in the Southwest Ballet Company out of Albuquerque with Ed Andros, and so we had dance students from this area of the state that got to perform with a professional company here in Hobbs, and we traveled to Carlsbad, did the Nutcracker there with the company. We did Coppelia. Right, and that all stems about when Tom decided to go back to college. The oil industry was really, it was awful, devastating. I think we had in 2 weeks period of time, we went from major oil companies here to nobody here. There were 800 homes that went on the market within 2 weeks. And of course, so as a business owner, your business gets destroyed. And so the bankruptcies were unbelievable. And the dance studio, we felt, was a haven for children. And so I did not want children to have to lose out on dance or piano lessons or voice lessons or anything else that was on the spectrum of developing outside the schools, because to be a professional and to be an advocate of the arts, you have to have that passion developed, and it can't just be in the schools, it has to be outside. So with an accountant and a lawyer, I said, how can I do something that allows me to help children when the dad or a mom lose a job? But this is this is always the first thing that goes, and could it be the last thing that goes? And so we developed the Michelic Fine Arts Scholarship Trust. We earn money by raising money through just raffle tickets, and but the IRS had a hard time understanding why I wanted to let children's talents be the reason for giving money. They just had a hard time with that. And so this one gentleman on the phone, after about an hour or so, I said, so how can I get to do what I need to do? And he said, well, you're nonprofit, but you'll be taxable on anything you don't give away. So at the end of each fiscal year, you have to give as much away as you can that you've earned. So that's what we do. We earn maybe $10,000 in a year. We collect that, and by the end of the next year, it's gone. and we pay the taxes on the little amount that doesn't get given away and stuff like that. So, and then we're free to do whatever we need to. I have a board. It was 5 people, now it's 10. All walks of life, except that they all have one thing in common. They're either connected with dance or music or drama or instrumental instruments and stuff like that. So they okay things as they need be. If we need to bring in a guest artist, there's a lot of money in there to bring in a guest artist so that people can take dance classes for free, then that's what we do. Recently, in the last couple of years, I went to New York. We took our dancers to New York. They got to study with Broadway Dance Center for free because the trust paid for that. And then the bonus was that we went to see Phantom of the Opera. And one of our guest teachers from a time before happened to be the gentleman who had been in Phantom of the Opera, and his best friend was playing Raoul that night. That we were going to be in New York. So he said, please let me get hold of my friend, and they'll give you a tour of the set backstage after the show. So we did. We met Kyle Barishk, and while we were doing this little tour, he was just so elegant and happy that he could help out Matthew's friends from New Mexico, which he had just met. So, and I looked at him and I said, have you ever thought about doing a master class? And he said, well, no, I'm usually performing. And I said, well, have you ever been to New Mexico? And he said, no. And I said, well, I would love to bring Matthew in to teach the dance classes. And I said, and I would love to have you come in and do some drama classes. And he said, fine. And so we had enough money in the trust that year because we didn't have any emergencies where somebody had lost a job or, medical emergencies where a mom or a dad were down on their luck. So we were able to bring in this young man currently on Broadway. So I called Summer at the high school and I said, how would you like to have a workshop free of charge for your most advanced students to work privately for one afternoon in September? And she said, oh my gosh, yes. And so we were able to bring that, and then he came to the studio and he taught some classes too for people that were at the community playhouse and the high school and things like that. So that's just one of many things. We helped a young lady years ago. She was given a voice scholarship to Eastern, and then she showed up at the door at Eastern her freshman year, and the scholarship was gone because it was given to someone else in another department. And we all know how funds sometimes go from one department to the other. And so one of the board members came to me and they said, she auditioned for this and it was like $800. And she said, without that, her parents don't have that in their pocket right now to pay for that, so she'll have to wait another semester to even start. And so I said, well, let me see if we've got it in the account, and if we do, I'll send a letter to all of our board members, and if they okay it, she's got it. And so then I said, no, we're not going to do it by mail. I'll just call everybody right now. So we did a verbal okay and just marked it down, and we sent the check off to Eastern, and she graduated with a degree in music 4 years later. So, little things like that. Sometimes people don't see it. And, I met Glenise when Marcy was taking dance from me. And so 1971, and she came up to me and she said, have you ever thought about choreographing a musical? And I said, oh, I choreographed them for Eastern New Mexico University. I choreographed Little Mary's Sunshine for Albuquerque Light Opera my junior year in high school. And so I said, oh, I'd love to. So I came in and I choreographed West Side Story for her. That was the first one. Then after that, it was just seemed like every year when she needed something, she would come to me. And then if I needed help with my sets for the recitals, she was always there. So our friendship kind of started growing that way. And then, of course, our love of good food and stuff like that kind of intertwined and stuff. But after a while, and I can't remember how long we had been working together, her background, her professional background, kind of blended with my professional training coming up in Albuquerque and, with Albuquerque Light Opera and stuff. And so she would say, this is what I want. And I'd say, okay. So I'd start choreographing, and I'd say, is that close to what you want? And she said, that's exactly. And vice versa. If I needed a set built, I said, how did you know that's what I really wanted? So Glenise and I, it's almost like we were soulmates in terms of the theater. She had this expertise from building sets and musical theater from the directing side of it. I had the talent from the choreography, the dancing, the singing, and then also kind of meshed together, having been a performer and stuff. But we did some really good stuff. The one thing I really wanted to wring her neck, though, was when she came to me. Viva Santa Fe, of course, I loved, and that was an original. So I had no clue where the direction was on that. And it just fell into place because the music was so great from New Mexico. And the style and the storyline was absolutely lovely. Even though some of the characters were, you always had to have a villain and a heroine and stuff like that. So, and then we got to work with professionals on that side. But then she did, years later, she wanted to do Anything Goes. And she came to me and she said, how do you feel about teaching adults that have never tapped to tap? And I said, oh, that's not a problem. So how much time do I have? Do I have like a semester? No, you have 6 weeks. And she said, but I think if you put a couple of your dancers in the front and they do it, it'll work out. And I said, well, yeah, because I can get that taught up real quick. And I said, so how many people are we talking? She said, 30. And I said, Glenise, 30? And it happened. I mean, we used real basic tap and then sped it up. But all the community players were just wonderful. They were real troopers on trying to do that and stuff. And so we did that. And then I think one of the funniest things we ever did together was Fiddler on the Roof. And the lady that was the matchmaker, okay. Anyway, so this woman evidently got really sick and ended up in the hospital right before we start the show, and we had no understudy. And she said, so Glenise was just going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And I said, this sounds like right out of the movies. And I said, but I think, since I'm not in the show and I just choreographed it, if I stand on this side of the stage, when you have to be on this side of the stage, and I have a huge cue card in the wings, can you see that? And she goes, yeah, I can do that. And I said, and then when you have to go for an apple or something, put something in the basket. And I said, and then I'll run downstairs to the other side of the stage and pick up the other cue card. So we rehearsed it that way in her apartment, not her apartment, her house. And she ended up doing 2 performances that way. And then the woman came back for the, thank God. Anyway, so that was something that we did together and stimulated each other's talents. And it was like Lucille Ball and Ethel. That's how we figured we were a lot. But anyway. So.